Hi, and welcome to the Open Study. I'm Craig Allen. Today, we're going to talk about biblical characters and how to see them with flesh on their skeletal formation. A lot of times, I know when I was young, especially, I saw characters that I learned in the scriptures as placeholders, and I would attach events and specific statements to them, but I saw them more as this relatively flat character as opposed to a three-dimensional being, one with a skeleton with flesh on it. And so today I want to talk about things that I found useful that help me put flesh on the skeleton of these biblical characters. And so as I do this, I'm just going to talk about how we do this and then how we can see them as people once we put this flesh on them. So to begin with, I would say suggestion one is we look at biblical characters in particular, understand their name. The most important thing, especially in Hebrew thought, is that the name is part of their soul. And we can look at this as name, Shem, is at the very center of the Hebrew word for soul, neshama. And so the Shem, their name, is really the essence of that person. And further, the Hebrew concept of book, of story, the book of your life has a numeric value, Sefer has a numeric value of 340, which is exactly the same numeric value of Shem, your name. And as people that think in Hebrew or speak Hebrew or want to do, they connect words that have similar numbers together. Every letter in Hebrew is the way they write that has a numeric value. And so if they write the number 2, they know that Beth, Aleph, Beth, that second letter has a numeric value of 2. And so you can kind of add up the value of the letters in a word and it means something. And so they can look at other words that have that same value. And so book and name, the story of your life, is captured in your name, the way that normally is thought. Now, there's also other interesting details that you can capture about a person. For example, their story arc. And with this, we can look at fantastically interesting characters in the scriptures. David, who went from shepherd to king, or Saul, Paul, who transformed from an antagonist of the church to one of its most powerful witnesses. And Mary, the mother of Jesus, if we think about it, she went from just a regular young girl to become the mother of the Messiah. What a transformation that had to be for her. Or Mary Magdalene, regardless of what her starting point was, she became a powerful and unique witness of the resurrection of Jesus Christ's mission of redemption. Now, there's also other interesting details that we can look at as we try and understand these people. There's little details that we can find. For example, John the Baptist, if we think of him, he was to drink no wine or strong drink. What does that really mean? Does that imply something? Was he a Nazarite? There's implications of these details. Or Joseph of Bethlehem. One of the things I found interesting is in the Proto-Evangelion, Joseph, they say he threw away the hatchet. And that phrase, throwing away the hatchet, what does that mean? And if you dig deep, you can say, oh, that only has significance if Joseph perhaps had a linkage, if Joseph had a linkage to the Essene community. Similarly, think of the Magi. What were the gifts that they brought in addition to gold, which has value, but was frankincense and myrrh? Why those two things? What were the implications of them bringing those two items? So, and we can continue, but so understand their names, find interesting details, and learn their historical setting. Um, I would say you really can't understand much of the religious development that was going on at the time of New Testament development, of the time of Christ, the New Testament, unless you understand Herod and Rome and the factions, the different Jewish religious factions, the Sadducees, the Pharisees, the Essenes, and what were they doing? I mean, what were the different religious pressures and intentions? Further, I really think it's important if you find parallels and linkages in that character to other characters in the scriptures. Did they quote someone? Why? Um, did they themselves create the link to another story? And one of my favorites is if you think of Jesus changing the water to wine and that wedding at Cana. What was his quote that people don't understand sometimes? Woman, what have I to do with thee? Or, Kimoi kai soi. He's talking, he's quoting a scripture. He's in fact quoting a story in 1 Kings chapter 17 about the widow of Zarephath. And this is the story of Elijah. And why would he quote that right then? So you get a lot of insight if you find these parallels and linkages. And then one of my really favorite things is you think of the symbols associated with a person or a story. And the example I'm going to use is water. That completely adds a totally unspoken context to, for example, the Samaritan woman at the well that Jesus spoke to. And what are the parallels? And you can see very important symbols. I like to consider the scriptures as possessing a story grammar. There's a proper way, a symbol grammar. In this symbology of the scriptures, certain symbols fit in a grammatically correct way, and they make sense or they don't. And so you can see the way those symbols are used. And so story grammar or symbol grammar, I think, is really important to understand the characters. And then, how do you see these people, these characters as people? You have to think about them, their trajectory. You see the changes in their life. You try and see the world through their eyes. And as you imagine and you think about these characters as real people, you can think, well, what would I do in that situation? How would I feel? How would I think? And these actually are some of the techniques that I try to use as I learn about and study characters and try and put flesh on their bones. Hope this is helpful. Thank you very much. We'll see you next time.